Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? This is Vernon Oakes on Everything Cooperative. Welcome this beautiful morning in sunny Washington, D.C. We have the Pope on the Hill addressing the Joint Congress, and I'm glad you're listening to us this morning. We have Erma Wilburn on the phone with us. Good morning, Erma.
Good morning. How are you?
Excellent. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good.
From Albany, Georgia.
Albany, Georgia. Yeah, deep down south.
Deep down home. Okay. Down south.
Yeah.
And you and your husband own 80 acres and you farm. Is that correct?
Yes, we do.
So were you all given 40 acres and a mule twice?
I wish. No. This land has been in this family for probably 150 years or more.
Wow.
So, yeah, we are the last caretakers. And it has gone down from over 2,000 acres down to 80. So we are desperately trying to hold on to that.
From 2,000 acres to 80 acres. That sounds like when Cornelius Blandy was on, he was telling me it was like, I can't remember the numbers, 30 million acres in 1910. And that black farmers own, and it's down to like 2.7 million, and it's the same kind of from 2,000 to 80 acres.
Right. Well, that's the tragedy that we face as a people, and it just means more disenfranchisement of a race of people that's been struggling for some years now.
So is Albany one of those very poor communities?
Oh, yeah. I was just reading some information on just how poor we are. It's really shocking that we're among the fifth poorest states in the Union. We have, right here in Dougherty County, our poverty rate exceeds 34.6. So we're really struggling down in this area.
34.6% of the population is below the poverty line?
Deep poverty.
Well, how do you guys survive down there?
Well, I think the picture is reflective of a lot of things that's going on. We were, at one point, we had lots of industry, millers. We still have millers. I understand there's something going on there, too. But we had Merck's, big chemical company. We had Firestone, and all of these big companies left. So you have a community that's gone from people making $40,000, $50,000 a year back down to 3/4 of the people making $11,000 at best. So that's the median income. So that's
$11,000.
Right, trying to live off of $11,000 a year for a family of four. It's almost impossible. So of course you have all the ills that poverty brings about, increased health risks. We have a huge population of young men that's in the prison system, and I tie that directly to poverty too, because you don't understand what it is to struggle from day to day, maybe not have enough to eat, and these young men are going out trying to help feed their families. So you get burglaries, you get holdups, you get a number of things that probably would not happen, if people were able to make a decent living and homes could be more stabilized. So I tie the crime rate to poverty, and so we just live in a very unstable situation when poverty is just real hard.
I was trying to get the number here in the district. It's the family of four in the Washington metropolitan region. It's $98,000 the average median family income, and if you got 11,000 at that range, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I believe if you're below $28,000 median family income, then you're considered a poor community. And if you guys have got 11, you're half of that, less than half, because your income level for the average family of four. So that would be in pretty bad shape. Oh. And I've often thought, I have not thought so much about the high rate of incarceration being on poverty, but I have put more of it on how this war on crime or war on drugs, when they put you in for a longer period of time. I've got 3 nephews that have been in and out of jail on this drug stuff, and one of them, I think he got a 20-year sentence, and he's been there about 12 years already. Mm-hmm. So 40-some-year-old man. So it's a combination of if they go out trying, and his wasn't because of poverty, but in your area, if they're going out to try to put some food on the table for their families, and were maybe 19, 50, or 60, they might have gotten a year sentence. They may get 10-year sentence now. So you get a combination of things that cause this high rate of incarceration.
Right. Well, even, the economics of drugs, illegal drugs, taking such a hold on these communities is because of the poverty. It's because, if you offer a person a job, say they're going to make some money if they take something across town, the lack of funds is going to say, the chance is good that person will take that opportunity to make some money. So, you say he's a drug dealer, but he's a drug dealer out of necessity to survive. So a lot of it is, like I said, has that foundation of poverty being a catalyst for a lot of criminal activity.
You speak wisdom, my sister. And how long have you and your husband owned the farm? Mm-hmm. And are you all part of any cooperative?
Right now, we belong to the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which is, basically bring farmers together in hopes of, if we get large markets that we can fill together, that would be an option for us. But in the sense of a worker cooperative, we're not a part of one yet. But hopefully, I can get my husband to look at that as a way of helping to save the land, because I'm 66 years old and he's 68. So, unless we have the children that's willing to come to the land and farm, that land too will wind up in some other person's hands, and it may not even be farmland anymore. So, we're trying to work on that in several areas. Of course, my job with VISTA, in that I'm working on hunger issues. We've started a Feed My Sheep program with a community-based organization, which have our youth connected to farming again, the agribusiness part of it and the agriculture part of it. And that's the big issue. Our youth no longer look at farming as a way of life or a way of income. And, that's just been a few years ago that's where most of our livelihood came from. And it's really, very tragic if you look at Georgia now and from what it was when I grew up, where everybody, 60, 70% of the people lived in rural areas, knew or had some connection to the farm. You either worked on somebody's farm or your own farm, or you had relatives, grandparents that still lived on the farm. So you knew where your food came from. You knew how food was grown, how chicken You had all of that information. And now it's sad, but our children, they're generations of our children that have no connection to the land in that regard. And Georgia's number one economy is agriculture. So if you're totally disconnected to it, that's loss of income, that's loss of ability to maintain any kind of family wealth. It's a real bleak picture right now, and we're trying to stop that trend. To bring our children back to that culture where they could live off the land and appreciate the land.
We have to take a break now, but that's a great place to take a break to learn how to live off the land. Going back to agribusiness, agriculture. We'll take a break. If anybody out there has a question for me or Erma, please call in. She's 66 years old. I'm 68, the same age as her husband. So we've been around a minute. If you have any question about anything, particularly as it relates to cooperatives, please give us a call in at 1-800-450-7876. We'll be right back.
WOL.
Art All Night DC is back in Congress Heights. Main stage performances all night featuring Black Alley, Shutter DC's Rip the Rooftop fashion show, numerous visual arts exhibits, a 90s hip-hop exhibition with DJ Gemini and Will Rap for Food, and more. Saturday, September 26th at the Gateway DC Pavilion, 2700 MLK Avenue Southeast, from 7 p. to 3 a.m. Admission is free. For more info, visit artallnightdc.com.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks on Everything Cooperative. This morning we have Erma Wilburn from Albany, Georgia, on the line with us. We were talking about farming and how the youth of today have gotten away from the land, and how blacks used to own a lot of land in the United States in the 1910s, 1920s. And that has gone downhill where we've lost land. Cornelius Blanding, who's the executive director for the Federation of Southern Co-ops, was on the program here not too long ago, and he was talking about that. I had the pleasure of going down to Birmingham and then Epps, Alabama, where I met Erma about the middle of last month, and to the Federation's annual meeting. And I met a lot of good people down there, good home folk like Erma.
Great meeting.
And it was a great meeting. And so he was on the program also talking about the way that we have lost so much land. And Erma told us earlier that their family had 2,000 acres and they're down to 80. 80 sounds like a lot to me. And I did a little research, Erma, because I grew up in a small city in West Virginia, and I've been urban all of my adult life, and I don't know what an acre is. So I looked at a little research, and it said a football field is about 1.1 acres from goalpost to goalpost, from sideline to sideline. So that's a sense of what an acre is. And so if you got 80 of those football fields, okay, that seems like a lot to me. A city block is about a half of an acre. So some sense of what an acre is. So you've got 80 of those that seem like a lot. 2,000 seems like a whole lot more.
Right. Well, in Georgia, places like Mississippi, Alabama, you have a lot of farmland. And we're used to seeing large acres of land. I agree most people living in a city or brought up in a city, they couldn't really imagine having that much land. Of course, a lot of farmers grow row crops, corn and, soybeans, that kind of stuff. So, that's where you get all these tons and tons of food that feed the American people and other people. So, 80 acres, there are 2 or 3 families around us that still have about 300 acres of land. And that, to me, is great, and we hope that they can hold on to it. So I think we need a place where we can feel some level of security that we can grow food and feed ourselves, that we can actually make a living off of the land. So, we want to definitely go back into land purchasing and reclaiming land that families have lost, or make a way for them to hold on to the land. And one of those ways is to make sure that the land goes into the hands of someone who's going to take care of it and make sure the taxes are paid. We've got problems with people not doing wills and estate planning, so that we lose a lot of land that way. Nobody pays the taxes, and the state winds up with it. So we want to avoid that kind of land loss, and we want to avoid allowing ourselves to not take advantage of the programs that's out there to help farmers. There was a time when there was no help, or very limited help. They didn't tell you what was available within RCS. They didn't tell you what programs USDA had that could help black farmers.
What's RCS?
NRCS, National Conservation Resource Department. So, they have a lot of programs that can help farmers, like irrigation, getting an EQIP grant, which is an irrigation system. They have tunnel houses, or hoop houses, that allow people to have extended growing periods. So those grants are out there. Take advantage of them while you still can.
Well, those grants were not available for blacks here.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it took a major suit against USDA to open those avenues up. But that's how it's been for us as a people. Everything that we get, we have to really struggle for it. So, and that's why the struggle still goes on. As I told you in my bio, being involved in the civil rights movement at age 14, I see what has happened to our people, post that era. We've lost a considerable amount of ground, and until people really start looking at ways on how we can recoup, how we can reclaim our neighborhoods, how we can better our community, until people really start putting some practices in order, we're continuing to fail. And it's hard for me to see that when you've gone to jail, you've struggled. I was standing at the courthouse steps when they passed the voters' rights bill, with people in line to go in and register to vote. And you see how apathetic people are about voting now. That's painful.
Apathetic is they don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to break that big word down. Okay. People are apathetic, and that's what's sad. And also, it's even sadder for me is how young people just are apathetic about it, getting an education.
Yes.
And we fought so hard to be able to have choice.
Right.
So, trying to get the kids to understand the land and understand wealth, wealth building, that's huge. And that's everybody to understand how important voting is. That is tremendous. Now, I did look up while we were on break that the poverty level in the U.S. for a family of 4 is $24,250. Mm-hmm. And if you're 11,000, and I also saw that Albany, Georgia, was the 4th poorest city in the nation. That's pretty sad, pretty astounding. But
so that's what it is, and you really can see the effects of it all around you. And I just I try to be encouraging, not only just to be an encourager, but to be action oriented to solve the problem. That's why we're starting a women's worker cooperative. When I met you in Mississippi at the in Epps, Alabama, mm-hmm. I heard you say how interested you were in worker owned co-ops, and if anybody wanted to talk to you about it, that you would be open. And so I ever since then, because I see that as a way out for so many of us, particularly women in this area, who bears the brunt of what poverty does. Single women, trying to raise children alone, very little education, job opportunities nil to nothing, and those that are available are so low in wages that they have to have 2 or 3 of them just to make ends meet, which means then there's no one to watch the children. So it's just a bad cycle to get caught up in.
Can I stop you a second? Because the picture you're painting is very, very bleak and sad. It looks like in D.C. right now, the sun is up and it's a warm, sunny day, but as you talk, it's gotten very cloudy in the studio. Okay, it's sad when you say, okay, I live in a community that is the 4th poorest in the nation. An average income for a family of 4 is $11,000, and to be in poverty in the U.S. standards is $28,000 average income for a family of 4. And in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the average income for a family of 4 is $98,000. To give a sense of this wide disparity of wealth or income and ability to take care of family. So then you get young men will go out and say, okay, if I can't make money, then I will steal. And then they end up in jail, and then they've had children. I just saw a video with the president talking to about 7 incarcerated men, and they were talking about these kinds of things. And then the system keeps them in there longer and longer and longer, and they'll come out and their kids will be almost grown and won't even know them if they're not already grown. So you're left with women, and then they are not educated, and they have children, and they don't have job opportunities. And if they do, they might be at a McDonald's or fast food or something, cleaning or something. And so there's no income. Right. And all of the industry has moved out of the area. So what you have left is perhaps farming. But there is a bright spot, and that's why I wanted to stop you. Let's talk about the bright spot. And the bright spot is cooperatives. Right. And that's why I wanted you on the program, Erma, is that talk about this bright spot of possibilities of people coming together. Now, there was a guy on the program, and I go back to him the first month that we were on 2 years ago in October. His name is Papa Sin. He's a black man out of Senegal. And he said to me that co-ops are only formed when there's a community need. If there's not a community need, there's no need for a co-op. And you have a community need, a big one down there. And we've got to take our second break, but we'll be back to talk about the community need and how you can form co-ops. And we'll give you some definition of like a worker co-op and other co-ops. And we'll talk more to Erma about what's the bright spot in a very dim look for predominantly African Americans in her community in Albany, Georgia.
68% or greater.
68% African American?
Mm-hmm.
Poor. Okay. We'll be back. We'll get the traffic and the weather and the news, and then we'll be back to talk more about a bright spot.
When the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh.
You know, one day, Erma, one day, we can get the glory, and I believe that the way of getting it is through this cooperative business model, the bright spot that we talked about before we took break. So let me give a definition of a co-op. A co-op, for those of you that listened before, you already know this, but a co-op is any business you can think of. Any business you can think of could be a co-op, but it goes to who owns the business and who controls the business. In a co-op, if we have time, we'll go over the 7 principles later. But a co-op, if the business is owned and controlled by the employees, the people that work there, then it's called a worker cooperative. Also, if it's And that any business, okay? We're going to talk about a bakery that Erma and 9 other ladies are looking at forming in and around Albany, Georgia. So then if the business is owned and controlled by the people that use the products or services of the business, then it's called a consumer co-op. And housing cooperatives is the way that I got started into understanding co-ops, or credit unions, another consumer cooperative. And then a couple weeks ago, Erma, I had a lady on from Madison, Wisconsin, and they have a health clinic that's a consumer co-op. The patients own and control the business, and that was phenomenal because it's patient-centric. Everything is focused on the patient, every decision, every policy, and so it's not doctor-centric or profit-centric. So those are the main 2 forms of co-ops. And then farmers have formed purchasing co-ops where they buy their gas or their seed or fertilizers or any of the things that they need, and they buy it in higher quantities, then they normally get a lower price and sometimes a better product. They can negotiate better when there's more people. And then they also form marketing co-ops so that they sell their products together so they can get into different markets and get people that would buy it and then buy it at a higher price. So co-ops helps a lot. It's just forming businesses. And that last piece on this, a gentleman, the ambassador to South Africa, was on a program. His name is Jim Joseph, and he talked to us about Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the concept. It's a way of being, of helping each other. I am because you are, and Erma, you are because I am. And so that if I do something to help you, I'm helping myself. If I do something to harm you, I'm harming myself. They call it humanism, okay? And I think that's the center of cooperatives. And that's what I've fallen in love with this model as I have managed. That's what I do in the daytime is I manage housing co-ops, and I see people making decisions that's good for the housing, the community, and not necessarily what's good for an individual. And the businesses can prosper and prosper extremely well, and you don't need a lot of formal education. You don't have to have college degrees or masters or doctorate or anything. You do have to get knowledge about how to run a business and knowledge how to make decisions together. And when there are conflict, if you have 2 or more people, you're going to have conflict. How do you solve that conflict in a positive kind of way that benefits? So that's why I love co-ops, and those are the definitions. So you were talking about, before we took break, of forming this woman-owned bakery. So what's that about, and why are you trying to do that?
I definitely think that cooperatives is the way to go to address poverty in this area. We have women from different counties and all in the proximity of a commercial kitchen. And we have women who bake very well. So I said, now this is, the kitchen is underused here. So we have resources. We have people resources. And all we need to do is get together and form this worker co-op, because it's going to address some of the poverty issues in our areas, and it's going to be 3 or 4 counties that will be affected, because the women will be coming from 3 or 4 counties, and we will be a model, hopefully, to spur other people to look at other co-ops, worker-owned co-ops that they could do. I think it's a great way to bring our people together, to work together. I believe in the one man, one vote. I believe that premise is the best premise in order if you're working together, because once you try to be the sole decision maker in something, you're going to fail. The minute you try to work your own business, if you don't inherit a whole lot of money where you can hire labor right off from the start, then you're looking at, failing, because you can only go so far as a lone person.
Well, let me say to you this way. For individuals that start businesses, there's a 75, 80% chance it's going to fail in the first 5 years.
Right.
But in the co-ops, because people come together and they learn how to work together and they own it, and they're focused on the both the workers and the product and the customers and not on profit, then it has a much higher chance. I haven't heard the number, but it's more like 10 to 20% may fail in that first 5 years, as opposed, it's just the flip side of where 80%, 75, 80% fail
right.
of the normal business that starts in the U.S. as a capitalistic model of just trying to sort of how you increase your rate of return, as opposed to how do you increase the benefits for your workers and for your customers. So learning it and working together has a much better chance of success in a worker co-op.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I just see it as just a great way to address this issue, and the women are excited about it. They have, one of the women already have more orders than she can handle by herself in terms of people ordering wedding cakes and things of this sort. And so this works for her. She said, yeah, I need, someone to start baking right away, so she's really excited about it. Like I said, you don't have this kind of thing in the black community that often. I don't know of one worker-owned business in this community that people of color have started. Now, when I was connected to New Communities, we have a 6,000-acre farm, and we were a co-op. And it was pretty much based on worker-owned premises. So I do know, I know that that's a much better model to work with, because you grow along with the business. And you got people who, if it's your own, you have ownership in something, you're going to work hard to make sure it's a success. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to do something that's going to impact, our people in a positive way, and hopefully start something that will snowball. Because I've been saying for several months now, that black people need to fight this fight on the economic level. We have been losing, just trying to deal with it politically. We must keep the political pressure there, but we have to fight on an economic level in order to really have some successes, because that's the only thing that people really recognize is your ability to have some economic clout. And if you're saying I'm not standing in line waiting for you to hand me something, I'm standing in line to be a producer, to produce something, that comes from me, and I'm just I just think it's a great way to go. I thank you for even continuing the work that you do, because that's an encouragement for me.
This work. Well, I'll talk. Hopefully, I'll have a chance to talk about my goals in life. About 5 years ago, I figured out what I want to do when I grow up, and that's to promote. I'll just go ahead and say it now. Promote co-ops, which this is about, and National Co-op Bank is helping to sponsor this, and WOL has been very, very supportive. Their motto is information is power, and we're trying to give people the information that they need to form co-ops, because I do believe that is a way that we have to come out. I never believed that they were going to give us 40 acres and a mule. Even as a young person, when I heard that, I didn't see how anybody rich was going to give away what they had, and they try to get more, not give anything away. So, and my third one is to help to create some kind of more education, either getting schools like the Howard Universities, Tuskegee is doing some of this with you guys, and maybe I went to Stanford. The man that Leland Stanford that started, he was a senator, and he was trying to get worker co-op laws back when he started Stanford. So trying to get somebody, and then I've been talking to Cornelius and Zippert down there and the Federation and EPS have seen maybe we could start a community college that just focus on co-ops, the things that we're talking about, how you start them, what they're about, why they work, what's the socialization of co-ops, what makes them work so well. And you mentioned that when you own it, you make better decisions and you work harder for it to be successful. And if you learn how to work as a group, you have that peer pressure in a positive way of doing things. So getting that education. And my fourth one is to give money back to, I started with two groups, co-ops, and that's the Federation of Southern Co-ops, because I met Ralph Page and really focused and inspired about what he's doing, and now Cornelius. And then Dame Pauline Green at the International Cooperative Alliance, what they're doing. So I wanted to give back to them. And I'm looking now at also expanding at the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. And you know, sometimes in giving, for those of you out there that looking for something to give, if you give $10 a month, I mean, that can help a lot. And I didn't know until Cornelius talked to me about how this, when it's unrestricted funds, because most of their funds comes from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they are focused. They have to be used for certain ways, and most of the time they're not for administration. So any little bit you can give would be great. Now, I wanted to talk to you about the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to their web page, is usworker.coop, and you look under resources, and you'll see that there are a list of 10 or 12 different places to go get money. National Co-op Bank is also listed. North County Cooperative Development Fund is a place of getting money. You're going to need startup funding. Well, you don't have to have startup funding, particularly since you have a commercial kitchen there that you can use. And you also already
some funding because it's not for free.
Okay.
So we still have to pay to bake in there, and hopefully, we will do some fundraising, and of course we can always, can use that kind of help, because to me, the quicker we get up and running, the better chance that we have of spreading the word on how it's done, and people can see a successful model in this area, and hopefully it'll be something to catch on fire and other people will do.
That's the reason for this program. Now, listen, we've got to take our final break, and we only have 15 more minutes. And I want to talk to you about the Cooperative Development Foundation. They have some monies also and some technical school. Both U.S. Federation can give you technical advice, and the Cooperative Development Foundation. But we have to take our final break, and we'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial. Okay, we're back with our final segment with Erma Wilburn from Albany, Georgia, one of the poorest counties in the U.S. We're talking about the bright spot in this county because their problem is they don't have jobs, they don't have a way of making money, and so they're looking at what Irma's looking at is forming co-ops, which co-ops are formed to solve community problems. That's the main reasons for forming them, for starting them. And Chuck Snyder, who's the president of National Cooperative Bank, Irma said that co-ops are nothing but people helping people. That's all it is. And that seems to be very spiritual and biblical based. It's, I am my brother's keeper, and love thy neighbor. So it's just people helping people, and this is the 10 women are looking from 4 different counties of coming together and forming a worker co-op. Now, the Cooperative Development Foundation, they're getting ready to have an event, a walk on the mall, and they're raising monies. But they have a mutual service fund, and that fund helps agribusiness. It helps seniors in rural areas, and I think you might be able to get a grant from there. But they also have some revolving loan funds, so that's another place, and you can get them at cdf.coop, and that's for a Cooperative Development Foundation, and that's what they're in the business for. And you can also again go to U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives to look for funding and for technical support. Now, you guys have technical support there with the Federation of Southern Co-ops. And
so we have the Southwest Georgia.
That's what I was trying to get to. Okay.
Yeah, that's who I'm working with directly. The rural leadership co-op is really, I'm under their auspices as well. It's kind of RDLN. This group has been helping women, with things like co-op. And that's the first place I saw a workshop on worker co-ops was with RDLN, Rural Development Leadership Network, and Starry Kruger, one of the people that work very closely with that group, Shirley Sherrod. So they've been in the area of trying to get people to form co-ops. As a matter of fact, they have a sewing co-op that is under the Southwest Georgia Project, Southern Journeys, and so it's not where it's going to be, but that co-op is there, and that's a model that we can get some help from too. So we do have but the things the people that you listed, the funding sources, that's definitely something that will be helpful for us.
Well, the two main things that you need in order to be successful is knowledge and money. Also, you've already mentioned if you have the will to do it, and that's what the ownership helps to do. But real quickly, I want to go over these 7 principles because you talked about them. The first one is volunteer and open membership. And that one I liked. That's one of the first ones because it doesn't make any difference what color you are, the race, it doesn't make any difference what gender, it doesn't make any difference of whether you're rich or poor. You can be a member. It's open membership. The second, which you remembered, is democratic member control. That's normally one member, one vote. And so it doesn't make any difference how much money you have. In the normal capitalistic model, the more stock you have, the more money you have, then the more power you have.
Right.
Member economic participation, I like this one a lot. You normally put something in to be a member. And if there's surplus or profits, the group will decide how to allocate that money. Do they give some back to the members, or do they keep it for growth in the business? Or what do they do with that? Or do they spend some of that money to help out the community, maybe starting other co-ops or so forth? So the fourth one, autonomy and independence. This one says that this is the control part. They have to own it and control it. The fifth one is education, training, and information. And this was the first principle that caught my eye about co-ops is that, and this is I've seen everyday people, not with a lot of education, sometimes a high school, they'll get in and learn how to make really informed decisions so that when they vote, it's vote with knowledge because they get educated in the training. And the other thing I've noticed, Erma, is when I've gone to co-op meetings, just like the one last month in the Federation, people give information away. They like to share it. They want to see people to grow, and they don't hold it and say, oh, I got this knowledge and I can be better than you, and this competition isn't there from what I've seen. And then there's cooperation among cooperatives. It's the sixth principle, and that's trying to get the housing co-ops to work with the credit unions and the food co-ops to work with the farmer co-ops, and so that we can all build up this community. And that's the seventh principle, is concern for community. And that's written into the DNA of a co-op, as Dame Pauline Green says. It's trying to make sure that our community, the environment, when we leave it, like you're talking about the children, get them back on the land. When we leave the land, it's good land that we're leaving the next generations.
Right.
Okay, those are the 7 principles. You're working with VISTA. You're working with the Southern Georgia Project.
Southwest Georgia Project.
Southwest Georgia Project.
And Rural Development.
Rural Development. You are a farmer's wife.
Yes.
And you're starting.
I'm under the auspices of, all of these groups. I pretty much, we're all doing similar work.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Rural Development Leadership sort of, they have the position, the VISTA position, which they loan to the Southwest Georgia Project, And I was already connected to the Southwest Georgia Project. I've been with this organization probably since 1974.
Yeah, and it was started in 1961.
Yeah.
All right. And you're also starting a bakery co-op.
Right.
Now, that one is the one that I got excited about. One is I like to eat, okay, and particularly good pastries.
Yes.
But my grandmother taught me how to make them at a very early age, and to sort of work with people, women and or men, but women to sort of take the skill set, the baking skill set, and provide a product to the community at a price that would cause them to be able to increase their wealth, their financial wealth.
And it also, Vernon, because of the farming aspect, a lot of our farmers don't have markets for their produce. And so in order to make them sustainable, they've got to have a place to sell their produce. And we hope to be one of their customers because we'll be making zucchini bread. We'll be making carrot cakes. We'll be making a lot of the products will contain ingredients that the farmers grow. And so this is how we attack it from the anti-hunger thing, that we're actually helping to support our local farmers. And then we're creating a resourceful business that's going to make our community stronger and more sustainable as well.
Well, you also told me that they'll take the wheat or the grain, and they'll mill it, and they'll use that flour in the bread.
Yeah, we already have people nearby, local farmers that's growing wheat, and they have their own mill, and we're hoping to establish that relationship with them where we can buy our flour and stuff directly from them. So that will help that farming operation as well.
It seems like a win-win-win-win-win-win.
Yeah.
Now you create wealth, and so that you can create your own businesses. And this bakery is one, and you can look for other ones, whether it's garage, fixing cars, or you could probably even start getting a dealership to make it a worker cooperative where you sell cars. But there's all kinds of, what do people need there, and how do you create these businesses and get people in the community to come together and form those businesses so they create their own jobs, not looking for somebody else to come in and create their jobs. That's why I like co-ops, because it is up to us. We have to, as Black Americans, and you have 68% of your population Black, we have to find ways that we can increase our own wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got moved by that. Okay.
My friend says only we can save ourselves. I think that's a wake-up call that we all need to have. We all need to believe that we can pool our resources and be a better people. And I just believe that it's there. Now, you can look at Albany. You come into Albany, and that blight, that the picture that I painted, you won't just see it on the surface because, you come in, people, even poor people.
Friendly.
Maybe, no, but they're also living in some of them are living in very nice houses.
Okay.
But they're grapha houses. You don't have, like you come into a city like Baltimore and places like that, you're not going to have the burned out store fronts and stuff. You're not going to have the
Baltimore won't.
That says blight.
Baltimore won't like you talking about them.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know how, inner cities, large cities like that, Detroit, I just kind of meant all of the empty buildings,
Yeah, Detroit's the worst right now.
That kind of economic.
Let me get this in because we only have 1 minute. Cooperatives, the values are based on the values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. And that's why everything you just talked about is in the values. And in the tradition of the founders, cooperative members believe in the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for one another.
Yes.
Boom, boom, too. Last comment, because we got to sign off.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you. What do you say?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm, grateful for an opportunity to talk about this new project and what we're doing to help ourselves.
All right, dear. Thank you so very much, and we'll see everybody else next Thursday. And I'm looking to get some zucchini bread and carrot cake.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
WOL